Starfox is a sadly somewhat tragic game series. It was introduced in the SNES era, hit its peak with the N64 era, then just sort of fizzled out. Nintendo only occasionally brings it back, and the results aren't exactly great, looking at you, Star Fox Zero and Star Fox Adventures. However, there was one other Star Fox game on the GameCube that doesn't seem to get talked about nearly as much, at least not in my experience. Get ready to hop into your R-Wing and do some barrel rolls as I review Star Fox Assault for the Nintendo GameCube. Star Fox Assault is split into three basic gameplay types. You've got your traditional arm-wing segments, then you've got on-foot segments, and finally on-rail segments standing on someone else's R-Wing. Naturally, the arm-wing segments are classic Star Fox AF, where you're either following a rail and invading, or sometimes it's a more free reign. Basically Star Fox 64, which also had both of these. You'll feel right at home if you've ever played that game, and obviously the best feeling if you're a fan of Star Fox. You even face some bosses, including an Andross-like boss on the first level. On foot isn't quite as satisfying as Arm-Wing, but it works fine most of the time. It's pretty typical feeling for third-person shooters, and if I had to compare it to anything, maybe Infected for PSP, but I get the feeling even less people are familiar with that. Basically, it's pretty good. You also have a few weapon types to choose from while you're on foot. The standard blaster helpfully has a charge shot akin to Metroid to damage more armored targets. Then you've got a machine gun to fire faster, a rocket launcher for more powerful explosives, and a sniper rifle to do a lot of targeted damage. This is in addition to a grenade you can throw. If nothing else, at least these sections sort of feel like they belong in the Star Fox universe. Unlike Star Fox Adventures, which is very clearly a Zelda-like game that was never supposed to be about Star Fox, this at least feels like it fits. Also helps that for a lot of the outdoor sections, you usually get access to the Landmaster. Unlike 64, it's not basically a flightless arm-wing, you never really use it on rails. It's exclusive to the on-foot sections, and you can always free roam with it. It has its own health bar and higher firepower, so it's generally good to use until you're forced to ditch it to go inside a building or something. The best part is if it's actually destroyed, Peppy can just send in a new one. Unlike Fox's squishy, meaty body, it's totally expendable. Sadly, the third section is by far the worst. You're basically standing on someone else's R-Wing and it's 100% on rails. No, not on rails like the R-Wing, I mean really on rails where you're stuck in place. In my humble little opinion, it was a real pain. Since you can't avoid damage, you can only hope to destroy them before they destroy you. Thankfully, it only happens twice in the entire game, so it doesn't bog down the experience too much. Still very much a low point in the game, though. Could have done without them. I'm just glad I played it emulated, where you can use save states to get through it more quickly, and yes, I'm not ashamed to admit I saved scum that section, because I mean, come on now. Ultimately, though, the gameplay is enjoyable as a whole. The low points aren't enough to override the high highs, and when it feels like a Star Fox game, it's a blast. It's a shame Nintendo treats Star Fox as one of its more neglected franchises, seeming to use it as experimentation like Star Fox Zero. I think Assault overall shows the potential of the franchise, and while I wouldn't place it overall in the same league as 64, I'd at least consider it a hidden gem. It's certainly one of the better ones gameplay-wise, especially post-64. The plot pleasantly surprised me. It set things up to appear to be another Andross figure, and then without spoiling, it completely 180s itself in a new direction. Or at least it's new for Star Fox, even if it's clearly based off of something else. Given that both Adventures and Zero had to basically shove Andross in it since he's basically the Ganondorf or Bowser of Star Fox, it was nice to see a completely unique threat in this one. Obviously the plot isn't super deep, but Star Fox games never really are, and it does exactly what it needs to do. It has real stakes is what I'm saying. Okay, that's it for the non-spoiler section. Skip to presentation now if you don't want spoilers, or else Andrew Oikene will be slamming his big metal Andross fists into your face. So basically the new threat, deemed the Aporoids, are basically a cross between the Borg from Star Trek and insects. It's kind of funny actually, since the Borg themselves were originally going to be insects. It actually shows them assimilating people, starting with Pigma, but eventually going after allies, even Peppy. Thankfully, after beating the Aperoid Queen, they get better, but it still proved to be pretty tense as they were taken over. Starwolf even ends up aiding you through this, which was a nice change of pace. Given they come across more like bitter rivals than necessarily villains, it was interesting that they recognized the assimilation threat and worked together to put an end to it. So yeah, the plot isn't overly deep, but the bait and switch with an Andross figure with Andrew only to turn into an Insect meets Borg plot was an interesting one, and it did a good enough job raising the stakes. It's certainly much more interesting than just having Andross be the one responsible again.
I will destroy the Light system. Rawr, I'm Andross.
Nintendo, take notes. This is how you make an interesting plot twist. I wouldn't mind seeing more Starfox games with this kind of deviation from the norm. At least it more kept you on your toes. Starfox Assault came out in 2005, which is reasonably far into the GameCube's lifespan. For a GameCube game released around this time, it probably isn't going to blow anyone away. That being said, it still looks fairly good and does a fair job utilizing the GameCube's hardware. The environments are pretty decently detailed, and there's a nice use of real-time shadows in the on-foot sections. There's also a good enough variety in the environments as well. You'll have a more lush jungle area, military bases, asteroid fields, and cities in snow. The late-game area is fittingly alienistic to match the enemies you're facing, and Cornelia really shows off the added amount of detail afforded the GameCube compared to the N64. I played through the game upscaled in 1080p, and it still holds up decently well for its time. The voice acting is a strange one. It's not that the voices were bad, but they're clearly not the original voices, and it can be very uncanny if you're not used to it. Well, at least unlike Adventurers as Andross, it doesn't sound off-putting. If anything, you could say it's the opposite, and the voices are somewhat more serious sounding than Star Fox 64. Well, at least Andrew Oikini sounds silly for the amount of time he gets, and we even get that lovely little line, Uncle Andross! The music certainly has a very Star Fox-esque charm to it. You know, trumpets and the like. Just listen to the music that's playing in the background of this review and you'll get a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. It goes for a certain classic action kind of mood, and it does what it does very well. Sound effects are the same as for most games. They're there, and I can't really give a strong opinion on them. In terms of presentation, Star Fox Assault both looks and sounds very much like a Star Fox game. Along with the gameplay, the presentation actually makes it feel like a natural progression of Star Fox 64. The change of voices takes some getting used to, but if you can overlook that, it's a pretty good cinematic treat given it released back in 2005. Star Fox has sadly hit some missteps, especially more recently. Star Fox Adventures is describable as Zelda with a Star Fox skin, while Star Fox Zero is just described as frustrating due to the imposed Wii U controls. Star Fox 3D was good, but of course it would be, it's a remake. That being said, I think Star Fox Assault deserves a little credit. While it doesn't succeed in all categories, with the two right hitch moments especially frustrating and the overall on foot sections not being as fun as the tried and true Armwing sections, I think it does good enough to overlook it. I'd recommend giving it a try for fans of Star Fox, with the caveat that you'll have to get through some slightly less desirable elements and adapt to some strangely different voices. This has been my review of Star Fox Assault for the Nintendo GameCube. I've got a live stream Friday at 4:30 p.m. news video next Thursday at 6 p.m. and Let's Plays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. daily. All Eastern Standard Time, but subscribe and smart bomb that bell icon if you want to keep notified. A like is always appreciated, but I just hope you genuinely enjoyed yourself. That is it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in with me. This week's epic freebie until next Thursday is Gods Will Fall. Spread this video around like the name of Andross, and I will see you next time. Now go out there and capitalize on life. Peace out, have a good one, and have a nice and pleasant day.
Are you alright, Crystal?
Thanks for asking, Fox.